Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you once again for joining me for this evening's look into the Holy Book devotional. As you know, it's been a very challenging couple of weeks, and I thank you for your patience and for your faithfulness. And hopefully, we'll get through tonight's devotional without another lightning storm. So, once again, thank you, and I am your host, Charles Logan, bringing you this night's devotional titled "We All Need a Hero." You know, when I was putting this devotional together, I was trying to think of a song that would fit the theme of this devotional. And I thought back and I thought, Bonnie Tyler did a song back in 1986, and it goes in part like this. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero. Till the morning light, he's got to be sure, he's got to be soon, and he's got to be larger than life. Now, it's true, we all need a hero at some time or another. Look back in the history of our country. At times of crisis and growth, or when we needed inspiration, if we did not have a hero, we created one. For example, Paul Bunyan. When the nation was going through the pains of expansion, John Henry, when there was a Herculean effort to build the transcontinental railroads, and Molly Pitcher, the hero who inspired courage during the American Revolution. And I know that you can probably think of many, many more than that. Now, today especially, we need heroes. There are so many discouraging things that are happening in our society today that we sometimes feel that there just isn't much hope. Even we Christians experience discouragement at times that we see happening, and we just feel helpless to change anything. Societal and moral issues that fly against all that we believe. And the trend just seems to be gaining momentum. We look for heroes in our government, and there just doesn't seem to be any there, depending on your point of view, perspective, or position, or whatever. So let's look at our government for a minute, for a much-needed hero, someone to look up to, a role model, from the highest members of the government, all the way down to the pages and assistants. Heroes fall along the different lines of political affiliation. And you know something, that just isn't right in my mind. We have always been a country that prides itself in political and ideological differences, from the Whiskey Rebellion in the 1790s to the Vietnam War. We, as individuals and as a nation, have always stood for what we believe, and we had our voices heard. The United States government's not always been right in their decisions, but the difference was back then there was not so much hate directed against an individual or a group of people, not so much because of policies, but because of personalities. Now, I'm like most of us, looking for a hero, but what we get is a wicked, ugly, wretched witch with a purple shock of hair and a filigree glasses that would look better on a Cocker Spaniel. And when I say ugly, I watched her on a segment of Gutfield, and she proved the adage that opening one's mouth when it should be nailed shut will prove beyond a doubt that people elect the mentally handicapped. I'm not going to share her name with you. Now, Chuck Schumer said the other day that no one respects ICE or the Border Patrol. But you know something? I say God bless those who have to work under the conditions that are created by people like that. I could go on and on about the disrespect and the personal attacks and the threats and downright encouragement on the left to perpetrate bodily harm on those who they simply don't like. Now, during the intermediate time Between the conquest of the Promised Land and the monarchy, there was a succession of judges or military leaders who were raised up to deal with the Canaanites. During this time, not only were the people constantly disobedient, but many of the judges were as well. In this succession of judges appears an individual by the name of Samson. And here's what we are told from Scripture beginning in Judges chapter 12, verses 2 to 5. Now there was a certain man of Zorah, of a family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had borne no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold now, you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and give birth to a son. Now be careful not to drink strong wine or drink, nor eat any unclean thing. For behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Now this is one of the few examples in Scripture of an annunciation. And certainly this unnamed wife of Manoah doesn't seem too anxious to have a child, as did the women in the other accounts. This is maybe the first flag of many that separates this particular judge from our perspective of a hero. Samson grows up in Zorah, one of the many small villages that are near established Philistine towns. Scripture indicates that the Philistines had waged a concentrated effort to suppress the Israelites who lived among them. Now, I have to openly confess here, I really don't like Samson. I liked him even less when he was played by Victor Mature in the movie. Now, Victor Mature was a very good in portraying Samson as an egotistical, self-centered, entitled, selfish, disrespectful, woman-controlled, and dog-hating individual. But I never liked Victor Mature either, so I guess it was a good character decision. Yet Samson just doesn't fit the profile of either a judge or a Nazarite. What he does have, and this is unquestionably a gift from God to assist him in fulfilling his destiny, is his superhuman strength. Flag number 2. He doesn't seem to use it for the exclusive glory of God. In Judges 16, we're told that Samson had visited a prostitute in Gaza, and the townspeople, fearing him, wanted to kill him after he went to sleep by the gates of the city. Verse 3 begins, Now Samson lay until midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the city gate and the 2 posts, and pulled them up along with the bars. Then he put them on his shoulders, carried them up to the top of the mountain, which is opposite Hebron. Even before this, Samson had broken every rule of the Nazarite code. He had planned to marry a pagan woman. He had tasted strong drink. He had touched the body of a dead lion and killed a multitude of Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. Now Samson has consorted with the enemy. He has attended a Philistine wedding and visited their towns looking for the company of women. He has wreaked havoc on them only after he has been made to look foolish. He has killed thousands, fulfilling, of course, his office of military leader, but only after acting on a personal grudge. After reading these accounts, it makes one wonder if God is demonstrating his sense of humor while Samson fulfills his military responsibility as a judge. But you know his greatest weakness of all is this desire for women, and pagan women at that. But he meets his match in the beautiful and the desirable and delightful Delilah. Now Judges 16:4-5 says, And after this it came about that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her, entice him and see where his great strength lies, and how we may overpower him, that we may bind him and afflict him. Then we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. Quite a lot of money, even in today's terms, really. It's really humorous when you think about it. Here we have this big, dumb brute who can not stay away from pagan, untrustworthy women, toying and fraternizing with the enemy, when his responsibility is to fight them and keep them from harassing the Israelites, and in the person of a Nazarite besides. Now, you just can't make this stuff up. On the human side, Samson believed that he derived his superhuman strength from his uncut hair. If you recall, that is one of the rules of a Nazarite. In reality, Samson derived his strength from God and not from his hair. He flaunted his disobedience not only by breaking the code of the Nazarite, but by continually lusting after Philistine women. And in his mind, his strength does come from his hair, not even giving God the credit for his physical prowess. Now, I do not even see one time through this entire narrative that Samson even talks to God. Now, he is not only using his secret to seek the love of a pagan woman, but he actually believes that he, and that is his hair, is the source of his own strength. I believe that God had had enough with Samson, his disobedience and his arrogance. So let's continue with the account in Judges 16:17. So he told her all that was in his heart. And he said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite since my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. What makes this account so real is when one is in love, it's impossible to see things in a rational light. He has opened up his heart to her. He has forgotten about his vows, his mission, and his God, and all for the forbidden love. Now we look for heroes to protect our way of lives, but all we hear is defund the police. We look for heroes to quell those riots, but cities will not allow policemen to go in to stop them. Even with our hope and the certainty of our future, we long for a hero to triumph over evil. It just seems that there is no peace in our society either. We want to take comfort in the stories of heroes like the people in the Depression years took comfort in the movies as a way to get away from their problems, even for just a little while. My grandmother had a book of illustrated Bible stories. I love that book. I love looking at the pictures and thinking about those larger-than-life biblical heroes. And one of my favorites was Samson. I did not know much about the story, but that picture of that giant of a man pulling down that pagan temple with all of those jeering, heathen, laughing people just made me feel good. Even in my childish mind, it was good triumphing over evil. He really was my hero. Well, it is so true that when we are a child, we acted like a child, and when we grew up, we put away those childish things, and along with those things, we put away those ideas about our childish heroes. As you know, my passion is studying history, and especially history of the Bible. In fact, Those who listen to many of these devotionals might even think that I focus on history more than I do than the devotional part. But I look at it this way. God created history. He orchestrates history. And he has watched over and preserved his children throughout the course of history. And not to mention that he has used the movements of people through history to prove his good and his perfect will. Now, one of the things that I found out as I matured and grew more knowledgeable about the scriptures was that things are sometimes not what they appear to be on the surface. And that goes for some of my biblical heroes or anti-heroes, however you want to refer to them. I found out that this one superhuman act of destroying the temple of Dagon did not bring peace to Zorah, nor did it bring peace to the land belonging to the tribe of Dan, from which Samson had come. Now, don't get me wrong, I still have a very special place in my heart for Samson and his story, of course. However, I now understand this account in the perspective of a live flesh and blood person, a man with human desires and motivations and flaws, just like all of the rest of us. Our scripture reading this evening began with chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Judges. Now, it came about after the death of Joshua that the sons of Israel inquired of the Lord, saying, "Who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites, to fight against them?" I've referred to the book of Judges in the past devotionals as the Israelite Dark Ages. In the first chapter, it clearly states that the children of Israel did not take the promised land as they were commanded to do by God. If anything, it was only a partial conquest. The various tribes that made up the remaining inhabitants were still in control of many of the parts of lower and the coastal areas. There was no central government to speak of, and there was no one who held authority or respect like Joshua had. In my mind's eye, I go back to that picture in my grandmother's book. That picture of the hulking, blind, scarred, and beaten tower of a man as he uses his last bit of his remaining strength to dislodge those pillars of that great temple of Dagon. The image of that moment when those giant building pillars began to fall on the multitude of pagan worshippers is frozen in time, forever preserving the image of my hero as he fulfills his final destiny. As I know now, his strength was derived from God alone, not by anything that he did. Although he prayed fervently at the last, yet even that last prayer was for his own desire for revenge. Samson is still my hero in a way. He was a powerful but weak man. He was brought down by his own blind love of a woman over his love for God. But when all is said and done, he fulfilled his destiny, a destiny that was ordained by God, a God who creates and owns history, and who passes down that history as a legacy of how he brings his will and his way to completion. Well, I want to thank everyone again this evening for joining me for this edition of the Look into the Holy Book devotional. And I'd just like to close with these few words. It has nothing really to do with our devotional, but something I just want to share. I want to very sincerely thank you all for the kind words and the thoughts over this past week. You know, I did a devotional some time ago about pets in heaven and how I hope that we would see them again. But I do know this for sure. God gives us a very short time with him on this earth to teach us about unconditional love. So once again, thank you for joining me this evening. Lord willing, we'll be able to get together again next Thursday at 6 o'clock for the Look into the Book, Holy Book Devotional. And I am your host, Charles Logan, wishing you a very pleasant rest of the week, and may God bless each and every one. Thank you.